The transmission came without warning. A grainy, static-laced distress call from New Liberty, the largest American colony outside the Sol system. Voices screamed, alarms blared, then silence. Seconds later, every long-range scanner confirmed impossible. New Liberty was gone. 100,000 men, women, and children erased in an instant. Major Jack Reynolds stood motionless in the command center of Outpost Echo, his fingers curled into fists. The Empire had always been treacherous, but this was cowardice on an unimaginable scale. He replayed the sensor data on the holotable, massive energy signatures, telltale markers of orbital bombardment, but no sign of an engagement. No defenses activated. No warning. Just annihilation. Captain Darnell, Doc, Hatcher swore under his breath, shaking his head as he studied the readings. They didn't even give M a chance. Not a single warning shot. His voice, usually steady, had an edge of disbelief. Reynolds exhaled slowly, forcing himself to focus. "Survivors?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Lieutenant Elijah Carter, younger but no less hardened by war, flicked through data streams at a rapid pace. "Nothing, sir. We're picking up escape pod launches, but they never made it past the system's gravity well. They got picked off before they even cleared orbit." The silence that followed was suffocating. Sergeant Luis "Brick" Martinez cracked his knuckles, the sound like distant thunder. "Then we return the favor." Reynolds turned to his team, his most trusted men. They had fought together before, bled together. But this time was different. This time, they weren't just soldiers. They were the last response. The answer to the slaughter. "The Empire thinks we're soft," Reynolds said, his voice measured but seething. "They believe their fleets make them untouchable, that they can hit us, and we'll crawl away and lick our wounds. But they just made the worst mistake in the history of this war." Doc folded his arms, nodding. "They didn't just kill civilians. They killed our people. And they thought we wouldn't retaliate," Brick muttered, his dark eyes burning. Reynolds moved to the holotable, pulling up the system maps. "We're taking the fight to them. Not with some bureaucratic retaliation order, not waiting for the UN to sanction a full campaign. We hit them now, where it hurts." He highlighted a series of Imperial supply outposts surrounding the New Liberty system. "Their fleets move slow. They'll still be regrouping from this attack. That means their logistics routes are vulnerable. If we cut those, we starve their war machine." Carter smirked, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Sounds like a plan, but we're going to need firepower." Brick slapped a hand against the table. "Then we take it from them." A low chuckle escaped Styx, the sniper who had been silent until now. Poetic. Reynolds looked at his men, each one willing to die to make the enemy suffer. But death wasn't the goal. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was a reckoning. "We move fast, hit hard, and don't stop until the Empire knows what it means to cross us," he said. "Gear up. We leave within the hour." No more words were needed. They had their mission, and the Empire had no idea what was coming. The Imperial garrison on Velos 3 never saw them coming. Nestled in the heart of a supply chain, the outpost was little more than a way station, a checkpoint for warships passing through. Its defenses were minimal: automated turrets, a skeletal crew of officers, and a handful of patrolling sentries who had never seen real combat. The Galactic Empire didn't expect attacks here. Not so deep in their own territory. Reynolds and his men proved them wrong. Styx went first, a shadow moving through the dry, rocky terrain surrounding the base. He perched on a ridge, sighting down his rifle, adjusting for wind. One clean shot, One sentry slumped against a guardrail. A second later, another fell, their bodies crumpling soundlessly. The team moved in. Brick led the charge, hauling a stolen Imperial plasma launcher on his back, its weight nothing compared to the fury burning in his chest. Carter followed close behind, his modified pulse carbine tucked tight against his shoulder, already scanning for threats. Doc covered their flank, one hand on his rifle, the other ready to patch up anyone who took a hit. They reached the perimeter. Reynolds gave the signal, and Brick fired the first shot, a searing burst of plasma that ripped through the main gate like it was paper. The explosion shattered the night, alarm screaming in response. Then they were inside. Carter moved fast, overriding the base's security locks, jamming comm signals before the Imperials could call for help. They had minutes, maybe less, before reinforcements arrived. That was all they needed. Imperial officers scrambled, grabbing sidearms, barking panicked orders. They weren't soldiers, not really. The Empire didn't station real warriors at supply depots. They stationed bureaucrats in uniform, men who relied on the strength of the Empire's name rather than their own courage. Reynolds put 3 shots into the first officer who drew on him, his pistol bucking in his grip. Doc cut another down with a burst of gunfire. Brick tore through a squad of defenders, his plasma launcher spitting fire and death. Carter sprinted ahead, reaching the base's command terminal. He ripped open a panel, bypassing security with practiced ease. His fingers danced over the controls, accessing the station's database. "We hit the jackpot," he called out. "Supply routes, fleet movements, weapons manifests. The whole damn logistics network is on here." Reynolds stepped up beside him, glancing over the data streams. "Download everything." Carter jammed a drive into the system, transferring the files. "Almost there. Give me another 20 seconds." They didn't have 20 seconds. A squad of reinforcements burst into the control room, weapons raised. The Imperials opened fire. Carter dove for cover, bullets sparking off the console. Reynolds returned fire, taking one down. Doc was already moving, dragging Carter behind a column as Brick laid down suppressive fire. Stick's rifle cracked from outside, a clean headshot, dropping the last enemy where he stood. Carter grinned. "And that's why we bring a sniper." The terminal beeped. "Transfer complete." Reynolds yanked the drive, pocketing it. "Time to go." More boots thundered in the distance. The Empire was waking up. They set charges on the power core, rigging the base to blow. As they reached the exit, Styx radioed in. "2 dropships inbound. You got about 60 seconds before this place gets a lot more crowded." Reynolds keyed his mic, understood. "Everyone move." They sprinted for their extraction point, reaching the ridge just as the first dropship came screaming in. Imperial reinforcements leaped from the craft, weapons raised, but before they could fire, the charges detonated. The entire garrison erupted in a fireball, the shockwave hurling dust and debris into the sky. The Imperial soldiers barely had time to react before the explosion consumed them, their screams lost in the roar of the blast. The team ducked into the waiting stealth shuttle, Carter slamming the hatch shut as Reynolds took the controls. Engines flared, and they lifted off, disappearing into the night before the Empire even knew what hit them. Inside the cockpit, Carter held up the stolen drive. "We just took their playbook, sir." Reynolds allowed himself a rare smirk. "Then let's rewrite the rules." The stolen data was a goldmine. Supply chains, fleet deployments, security protocols, all laid bare for the first time. The Empire, in all its arrogance, never considered that a handful of humans might tear into its logistics like wolves among sheep. A week after Velos 3, Reynolds and his team watched from the bridge of their stolen Imperial Corvette as the next phase of their war unfolded. On the main display, live feeds from hijacked surveillance drones painted a picture of chaos. Convoys rerouted. Garrison commanders scrambling for reinforcements that would never come. The once efficient supply lines now twisted into bottlenecks and confusion. The Empire was bleeding. But confusion alone wasn't enough. They needed a killing blow. Carter stood beside Reynolds, scanning the latest intelligence. "We found our target," he said, zooming in on a station orbiting Tarsus Prime. Mid-range command center. High-ranking officers cycle through here constantly. More importantly, it's a research hub for their shield tech. Reynolds leaned closer. "They're improving their defenses?" "Yeah, but not fast enough." Carter tapped the display. "They've got prototypes. We take those. We're not just hitting them. We're making ourselves untouchable." Brick grinned from the weapons console. "I like the sound of that." The plan came together fast. They couldn't rely on brute force. Tarsus Prime was too well defended. Instead, they'd slip in under false credentials, posing as an Imperial patrol bringing in captured weapons. Once inside, they'd extract the shield prototypes, set the station to overload, and vanish before the Empire knew what hit them. Simple. In theory. The Corvette docked without incident, Imperial codes still holding up under scrutiny. The hangar crew barely looked at them as they stepped onto the deck in stolen uniforms, weapons hidden under long officers' coats. Doc and Brick pushed a hover crate loaded with salvage gear. Some of it real, some just empty shells hiding their real payload. A security officer approached, datapad in hand. "Cargo manifest." Carter handed over a forged document. The officer barely glanced at it before nodding. "Processing takes an hour. You'll need to wait in the officer's lounge." Reynolds gave a tight smile. "Of course." The moment they were alone, Carter whispered, "We don't have an hour." "No, we don't," Reynolds agreed. They moved fast. Sticks broke off first, slipping into the ventilation shafts with a silenced pistol and a datapad. Within minutes, the station's internal sensors flickered, key cameras looping pre-recorded footage. Doc and Brick made their way toward the research labs, navigating sterile corridors lined with Imperial personnel who paid them no mind. The Empire had gotten comfortable, complacent. That ended now. They reached the secured wing, 2 guards stationed outside. Brick didn't hesitate. 1 step forward, a sharp twist, and the first guard collapsed, his neck snapped. Doc took the second, a quick knife to the throat. Both bodies were dragged into a maintenance closet. Inside, the lab was a gleaming monument to Imperial arrogance. Experimental generators hummed softly, projecting shimmering blue test fields. A half-assembled personal shield emitter sat on a workbench, a prototype far beyond anything humanity had developed. Carter got to work, bypassing security locks, his fingers flying over the controls. "Downloading schematics now. We're taking the real thing, but this'll let us build more." Reynolds checked his watch. For minutes before the manifest check bounces. "Move." Brick heaved the prototype generator onto their hover crate, while Doc rigged a set of explosive charges around the remaining research servers. The Empire wouldn't get a second chance at this tech. Then the alarms blared. Carter cursed. They found the guards. No more stealth. Reynolds drew his sidearm. "We fight out." They moved fast, but the station was already mobilizing. The first squad of Imperial Marines rounded the corridor, rifles raised. Brick barely flinched as he fired the stolen plasma launcher. The first blast disintegrated 2 men instantly. The second melted through the bulkhead behind them. Stick's voice crackled over comms. "You've got more inbound. I'm covering you from above, but you need to run." They ran. Gunfire chased them, bullets ricocheting off walls. Carter fired back, dropping a pursuing officer with a clean shot to the chest. Doc took a grazing hit to the arm, but didn't break stride. They reached the hangar just as more troops poured in from the other side. Reynolds spotted a fuel conduit overhead. Brick. No need for further instruction. Brick fired. The explosion rocked the station, flames licking the ceiling, sending Imperials diving for cover. They boarded the Corvette, Carter barely sealing the hatch before Reynolds hit the launch controls. The docking clamps disengaged, the ship shuddering as it pulled away from the station. Fighters scrambled in pursuit. "Shields up!" Reynolds barked. "Not yet." Carter shouted, frantically wiring the stolen generator into the ship's power grid. "Give me 10 seconds." They didn't have 10 seconds. Laser fire slammed into the hull, alarms shrieking. Brick returned fire from the turret, tearing through the first enemy ship. The second closed in, locking onto them. Then the stolen shield prototype hummed to life. A translucent blue barrier flickered into existence around the Corvette just as another barrage hit. The ship rocked, but held. Carter grinned. "We're in business." Reynolds pushed the engines to full burn, streaking away into the void. Behind them, the charges detonated, consuming the research station in a blinding inferno. The Empire had lost more than data tonight. They had lost the illusion of control, and humanity had just leveled the playing field. The stolen shield tech changed everything. With Carter's modifications, their Corvette, once a fragile, stolen Imperial ship, was now a predator. Faster, more resilient, and invisible to standard Imperial tracking systems. But one ship wasn't enough. If they wanted real vengeance, if they wanted the Empire to feel the loss of New Liberty in its bones, they needed an army. Reynolds stood at the helm, staring at the tactical display. They had been hitting supply lines and research facilities for weeks, but now it was time to go after something bigger, something that would make the Empire stagger. Brick leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "So, what's the play?" Carter tapped on the console, pulling up schematics. Imperial Dreadnought Tyrant, a fleet command ship, docked at the Antera shipyard for resupply. He zoomed in. Heavily fortified, but lightly crewed during maintenance. It's the brain of the entire sector's operations. Doc let out a low whistle. "You're talking about stealing a dreadnought." "Not just stealing it," Reynolds said. "We're going to turn it against them." Stick's voice crackled over comms from the weapons bay. "Bold. Reckless. I like it." They move fast. Their Corvette slipped past outer defenses using stolen codes, approaching the station under the guise of a resupply ship. The hangar bay doors yawned open, welcoming them inside. Once docked, they stepped onto the station in stolen uniforms, their weapons hidden beneath officers' coats. Imperial engineers barely spared them a glance. Another supply team, another routine shipment. Until they weren't. Brick was the first to act. A single brutal strike crushed a guard's windpipe before he could sound the alarm. Carter hacked the terminal, locking down internal security, rerouting power to the station's auxiliary systems to delay reinforcements. The halls erupted into chaos. Reynolds led the charge, moving fast and precise, his sidearms spitting death. Doc and Brick flanked him, laying down covering fire as they advanced toward the tyrant's bridge. Sticks remained behind, perched on an elevated catwalk, picking off high-value targets with deadly precision. They reached the command deck, sealing the blast doors behind them. Officers scrambled, drawing weapons, but they were too slow. Carter's EMP grenade detonated, shorting out their comms and locking them out of control systems. Reynolds stepped forward, his pistol aimed at the ranking officer. "Stand down," the Imperial captain sneered. "You're outnumbered." Reynolds shot him in the leg. "Not anymore." The bridge fell silent. Carter worked fast, slicing into the dreadnought systems, overriding security protocols. "We're in." Doc checked his watch. "We need to go." Now, outside, alarms blared. The station had caught on. Fighters scrambled. Security teams mobilized. Reynolds took the captain's ID badge, scanning it into the system. "Brick, weapons online." "Sticks, you got eyes on their response?" Stick's voice came through the comms. "They're scrambling everything. We have maybe 2 minutes before they start breaching, then we're not giving them the chance." The tyrant came to life. Engines roared. Cannons powered up. Brick unleashed the ship's main batteries, obliterating the station's docking clamps. The dreadnought pulled free, tearing away from the shipyard. Imperial fighters swarmed. Reynolds gritted his teeth. Carter, shields. Working on it. Laser fire slammed into the hull. Then the shield prototype engaged. Energy rippled across the tyrant's surface, dispersing enemy fire like raindrops against steel. Carter grinned. "We're good." Reynolds pushed the engines to full, breaking free from the shipyard's gravity well. The station grew smaller behind them, alarms still shrieking. Brick fired one last shot, a parting gift. The explosion consumed the shipyard, sending debris scattering into space. They had done it. The Empire had taken everything from them. Now they had taken something back. And this was only the beginning.